Okay, good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, July 23rd, 2018, the Board of Selectmen meeting. We'll start this meeting like we start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So first, we'll give Westwood Media Center the ability to the right to record the meeting and ask if anybody else wishes to record the meeting. No problem. Westwood Press. Thank you, Zach. So the chairman's update, we have a couple of things to let you know. First is the library is absolutely turning five years old this year. So it's been 5 summers since the new Westwood Library has been there, and it's hard to believe, but they are going to have a 5-year birthday party. And a 21st Century Fund Library trustees, friends of the library, and the library staff. And it's planned for Saturday, September 15th, from 12 to 3. The day is really to celebrate the community of Westwood as well. Activities will include fun photos in the Smiling Faces photo booth, 10 holes of mini golf in the library. Sarah Gardner will kick off the celebration with a children's sing-along, and the official 5-year celebration will be at 1 o'clock. Remarks from Senator Rush, Representative McMurtry, and others, be followed by an official cake cutting, so there will be cake and refreshments there as well. We invite as many Westwood residents that would like to come, but also the Colburn School played a large part in the construction of the new library, and during the project, the school was moved to a temporary spot in the back of the parking area, and upon completion, the Colburn School was relocated to 668 High Street. This year, members of the Westwood Historical Commission worked with the town administration and library trustees to create and install an interpretive photographic exhibit about the Colburn School and the historical High Street District. It's designed by artist Helen Riegel, and I apologize, Helen, if I have pronunciation wrong. The exhibit on this display is at the library's community room, and as part of the birthday celebration, a formal dedication will take place at 1:30 in the afternoon with a ribbon cutting by members of the Historical Commission. The party ends with a wrap-up of the summer reading. Prize baskets will be awarded that day as well. We invite all the members of the community to join us at the Westwood Public Library on Saturday, September 15th. Did you want to say anything?
Noon to 3.
Noon to 3.
Everything is free and open to the public.
What's better than free? All right, so that's on Saturday, September 15th from 12 to 3. Also want to have you mark your calendars for Westwood Day this year. It'll be on the September 28th and 29th, which is, of course, the Friday night football game, and then the Saturday, the entire event at the Westwood High School. There'll be fireworks following the football game, and on Saturday it starts with a 5K road race, car show, vendor village, and 2 stages with local talent, food court, and a whole lot more. And for anyone who's been in town for a while, you know what a great day it will be. Finally, under the chairman's update, we have some good news to report. The Department of Energy Resources and Green Communities Division has approved a town of an award of $250,000 for the following projects in Town of Westwood's Green Communities Competitive Grant Application. So I'll try and list them for you. $66,000 for the high school LED lighting, $81,000 for the rec pool, for the thermal pool cover and reel, $3,000 for the rec pool lighting, $43,000 for the middle school LED lighting in the hallways, $13,000 to the Thurston Middle School for the unit ventilator motors, and $44,000 to the Martha Jones Building Management Control Systems in Phase 2. So they reviewed our application and determined that these are viable projects and meet the eligibility requirements for the competitive grant program. So we'd like to thank Tom, who's not here. But
Say one thing about
yeah,
that.
sure, John, go ahead.
So I really want to make sure that people understand the significance of this. This is 100% of what Tom applied for. And in about 5 years, in the past 5 years, Tom has achieved $2 million in grant money for the town of Westwood. So I was able to attend an event with him at the State House last summer. I couldn't go this year. He has such incredible credibility throughout the state and on behalf of the town of Westwood. So I think it says something when someone submits a grant, as someone who has submitted grants, to receive 100%. It says a lot. So Tom is not here, unfortunately. He's incredibly humble, but I do think we want to take note of what he has done for Westwood and continues to do for Westwood.
Mr. Corchin, did I hear you wanted to say something?
Definitely. I just want to echo your thoughts. Tom has been a tremendous asset to the town, to our department, to the school department. Also, Patricia Haley does as much as Tom does with respect to submitting this application and filling it out, so she needs as much kudos as possible as well. So the both of them are a fantastic team. And Mike can remember when we went years ago trying to embark on this energy efficiency endeavor, and Tish was as much of a part as bringing Tom in and creating that team, and we've done great things, so
Thank
proud of both of them.
I think it's worth mentioning the fact that in addition to the $2 million, which is the cash that we received from the green community and from reimbursements from Eversource, this is a gift that keeps giving, because once we make the energy efficiency, we have an annual decrease in our energy budget that goes along with it. So within 3 or 4 years, our share of it gets covered, and then it's savings from then on.
Okay. Congratulations, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
All right, so moving along to our scheduled action this evening, we have appointments to various boards and committees in town. So we have several open positions. First, we start the Housing Partnership, Open Space and Recreation Planning Committee, and of course, the Rec Commission. So first, we have Avi is here. Do you want to come up, Avi, and say hello? Hello. So, Avi, you've expressed an interest in being appointed the Housing Partnership for the Fair Housing Committee. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself for those that don't know you at home and in this room?
Well, we moved to Westwood 15 years ago, and I've been working in the field of affordable housing and monitoring of 40B projects for about 12 years now for a nonprofit up in Lowell. And Sarah kindly asked me if I would like to join, and I said yes. And I didn't know that I have to go through such motions, but it's okay.
Any questions?
No, thank you for stepping up, though.
No problem.
Nancy?
One thing we have, that you worked with the group that received the Roy London Humanitarian Award for helping the homeless families that were housed in Westwood.
Yes,
So you got to know a lot of the folks in Town Hall and all through doing that.
I know a lot of folks.
That's great. Well, that was such a great effort that
Yeah.
our understanding is it became a model at the state level for how different, step up and help people, and I think that, thank you for doing that.
Avi, we truly appreciate you stepping up. Entertain a motion?
Sure, so at this time, I propose that the board appoint Abraham Avi Glazer as a member of the Housing Partnership Fair Housing Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2019.
I'll second
All
that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thanks, Avi.
Okay, next we have a regular member for the Council on Aging, Hillary. I don't see Hillary here. I do happen to know Hillary.
I think Hillary is sick.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Hillary has lived in Westwood for over 27 years, most recently on Lake Shore Drive. Her and her husband, she has one adult child, who attended Westwood schools from middle school. She also does a great thing called Concert for a Cause that she often has at her house, and she does a lot of great things. And she has also been a member of the Council on Aging for the last couple of years, I believe. And so she would also like to serve as the Council on Aging representative to the
Housing Partnership.
Aging of the, yes, thank you. Any questions?
No, she's been a great addition to the Council on Aging, so I think that's,
Yes.
Okay, I propose that the board appoint Hillary Kohler as a member of the Housing Partnership Fair Housing Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2019.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, next we have an alternate member on the Council of Aging, Cheryl Fay. Cheryl, did you want to come up?
Not
Like,
really.
If you came, we feel like the need to, at least, allow you to come forward so people can see who
Okay.
you are. So Cheryl, you've been serving on the Housing Partnership for Fair Housing Committee and on the COA.
Not the housing, just the COA for the last 5 years.
Okay.
Worked at Clark House at Box Hill Village for the last 27 years. Lived in the town for 26 years on Schaefer Ave in Westwood. So I guess I'm just standing in for Hillary on the times when she cannot make the meetings.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions?
I
Okay.
think you're good. I would propose that the board appoint Cheryl Fay as an alternate member of the Housing Partnership Fair Housing Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee. It's brought to our attention that Chuck Sheehan, is Chuck here? Okay. Who's on the Westwood Youth and Soccer Board representative in the open space, and now we're gonna ask Tony Mullen to step in as Chuck has moved out of town. So Tony has attended the past committee meetings and has agreed and willing to serve in that role. I don't see that Tony's here.
Okay, I'll make the
What?
motion anyway. I would propose the board appoint Anthony Tony Mullen as a member of the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Then we have the Recreation Commission, met at the end of June to review its organization, and the commission is making the following recommendations for the makeup of the board. Going to move Paul Aries from a regular membership to an associate membership. And we're going to move Paul Tesseri from an associate membership to a regular membership. Both terms to expire June 30th, 2011. No, 2021. It's okay.
Mine says 2021.
Yeah, no, the top says 2011, the bottom says 2021.
Okay, I would propose that the board appoint Paul Aries as an associate member of the Recreation Commission for a term to expire June 30th, 2021.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I would further propose that the board appoint Paul Tesseri as a regular member of the Recreation Commission for a term to expire June 30th, 2021.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mike, did we find out who is the chair of the Recreation Commission now?
Mitch Katzman. Yeah, they just
Great.
reorganized.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along our agenda, we have a mini walk for hunger and approval of the walk and a new route. So, do we have anyone here speaking on that behalf, Mike?
Hey, Connie.
Oh, come on up.
Hi there.
Will you introduce yourself just for the
Yeah,
record?
Connie Rizzoli, Arcadia Road in Westwood. We're here tonight to ask for your approval for the mini walk, the interfaith mini walk having to take place again this year on September 23rd. And we have worked with Officer Ciardi, which we thank him so much. We wanted to change the route to make it easier. And I don't know, do you have copies of the?
We do.
Okay.
We do,
Yeah,
yes.
thanks.
Thank you.
And so I think it will be an easier, safer route, and we thank him for helping us put together this new route. We've done this at least 10 years, and every year that we've done it, we've had more participants and more houses of worship. It's expanded to several different communities. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and I hope you'll approve it again.
No, I'm good. Thank you
I think
for
so. I mean-
organizing this.
We've had a chance to look at the map, unless Nancy.
And last year you moved it to the fall? Was it last year, or is this the first year of the fall?
We moved it to the fall last year. We like to have it close to the Project Bread's main walk,
Yeah.
but we felt very strongly that we didn't want to do anything to diminish from the attention to the I Am Strong. And so we decided to move it, plus there are a lot of religious events in May and June. So we decided to move it to September.
So it worked well.
It worked very well, yeah.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
So I would propose that the board approve the Interfaith Mini Walk for Hunger for Sunday, September 23rd, 2018, to start at Temple Beth David at 2 p.m., proceed on a 3-mile walk with the proposed route attached to this package, contingent upon final approvals from police and fire.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.
That's great, Connie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, gentlemen, come on up. Yes, we're going to talk about K Street Sidewalk update and review.
I like this temperature. Is this the hot seat?
Yeah,
How hot it's gonna get?
And we have a heater underneath it
I
just in
guess,
case.
right?
All right, so just for the record, will you guys just introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'm Todd Corchin, Director of Public Works.
Mike Myers from TEC.
Brendan Ryan from the Department of Public Works.
Okay. So gentlemen, you had a meeting at the library, of which I did attend, so.
Did we, so we hosted a public hearing on June 6th at the Westwood Public Library to present our 30% design. It's really just our first benchmark once we received funding from the previous town meeting to pursue design. So, you know, we typically host a series of public hearings. 30% is the initial kickoff presentation of what I always refer to as almost a footprint to our design, the foundation of some degree. And at that point, we solicit some feedback from whoever's in attendance and try to incorporate some of those ideas and thoughts into our concept and then proceed forward with our design. I brought Mike Myers here from TEC, who did a fantastic job with the presentation that night. He shrunk it down somewhat, but he's gonna go over the presentation and bring up some points that were brought to our attention from the public, some inquiries, and to that note, I'll hand it over to Mike.
Okay, so this is essentially the presentation we gave back in June, shortened up a bit, and we added a slide at the end just to summarize some of the feedback we received at the meeting. First thing we did was take a step back to go back to our second public meeting in the fall of 2017, just to kind of recap where we were at that point. We understood there was a need to establish a safe pedestrian connection between the two villages, but we knew there were going to be significant impacts associated with that, in particular stone walls, trees, and wetlands, all the great attributes that make Gay Street what it is today. We were only at a conceptual stage at that time, so we didn't have all the answers. We weren't able to quantify those impacts. Fall town meeting then approved design, and here we are today at about a 30% level. And essentially what that means is we've done some detailed design, but we've done it on detailed existing conditions survey that's identified with accuracy where the property lines are, where those wetlands are, the trees, the stone walls, and all the other attributes you see out there today. We didn't just look at one alternative. We looked at two alternatives for the sidewalk layout. We looked at two cross-section alternatives for the roadway. We also brought on a certified tree arborist to help us establish this impacts analysis matrix that you'll see at the end of the slideshow. So to recap the alternatives, the first alternative you can see along the north side, we would tie into the existing sidewalk from High Street to Deerfield and continue all the way along until we tied into the existing sidewalk across from Pine Lane. The second alternative would include a sidewalk along the north side until we crossed right here at Thatcher Street, continued along the south side, crossing Milk Street, and then tying in right here to an existing sidewalk at Buckboard Lane. Then you'd continue along this existing sidewalk and cross back over at Pine Lane. The two cross-sectional alternatives are very similar. The only difference here is the lane width. The lanes today are about 11 feet wide. We also looked at 10-foot lanes, an opportunity to calm traffic and reduce those impacts along the corridor. Again, very similar. You may ask why, the 2-foot difference, but anytime we're looking at a corridor like Gay Street that's so sensitive to the impacts that are associated with a design like this, we want to make sure we look at all the alternatives. So this is essentially the impacts analysis matrix. Along the left, you can see the impacts organized by highest priority up top, stone walls. That was something we heard a lot of at the first two public info meetings, as well as wetlands and trees, easements, right of entries, fences, and utility poles. And then along the top, you'll see the different alternatives. The first two columns are the sidewalk along the north side. Last two columns on the right are the sidewalk on the north and south side. So if we take a look at 1A versus 1B, you can see a pretty substantial drop-off in stone wall relocations. You'll also see a pretty substantial reduction in wetland impacts and pretty similar impacts along.
Can you comment further though, what the number means when you say a drop-off? Can you
Yes,
Can you
I'm
tell
sorry.
us what those quantities actually say?
So that's by linear feet. This is 2,350 feet of stone wall, and then the wetlands are square footage. The trees are each, and then broken down further so you get a sense of the size of the trees.
And that's saying, for instance, that's the number of trees that will need to be taken down?
Yes, correct.
And for wetlands, that's the square footage that will be disrupted and have to be replicated somewhere else?
Correct. Yep. So again, if we look at 2A and 2B, it's kind of similar, not as much of a reduction, but you still see a reduction in the stone walls, wetlands, and the trees are about the same. Because it is just that 1 foot, once you get into the root system, based on what our arborist told us, you're gonna have our time really reducing them over a 1 foot reduction in the cross section. So what we did next was try to simplify this table and look at just the 2 10-foot travel lane alternatives.
Can you just go back for 1 second? I
Yeah,
guess I'm missing.
You go.
So if I read alternative 1A sidewalk north, alternative 1B sidewalk north,
Yeah.
the difference being,
It's 1 foot travel lane.
The travel lanes.
Travel lane is bigger.
okay. And
It
so
has to go farther into.
if we do an 11-foot travel lane, does that decrease the width of the sidewalk?
No,
The sidewalks are gonna be 48 inches regardless.
it'll be 5 foot, yep,
It'll be 60 inches.
65, 5, I think.
5 feet.
Okay, so
5,
in
5.
all of those options, the sidewalk width,
Sidewalk is the same, correct.
that seems wide to me, is that?
5 foot? 5 foot's pretty much the standard sidewalk, yeah. So if we look at the 2 10-foot lane alternatives, you'll see pretty good reduction in the stone wall impacts, a little bit more square footage in the wetlands, but a pretty substantial reduction in tree removals. The rest is pretty similar. The last thing we added here was we've looked at all the impacts, but what we wanted to do is take a look at the safety perspective, and that's the pedestrian crossings. If a sidewalk is on the north side, there'll be 0 new pedestrian crossings. If we install a sidewalk along the north side and then cross at Thatcher, we'll have our first crossing there. We'll then cross again at Milk Street, which was identified in our first 2 public meetings as a major safety concern, and then we cross back over at Pine Lane. So when we take a look at the impacts and the safety perspective, the data right now at this point in the design really tells us that this would be the best alternative to advance. We recapped some of the next steps at our last meeting in June. Board of Selectmen update here tonight. We're also meeting with the planning board on August 7th. After those 2 meetings, look to advance the design, explore funding opportunities for construction, and circle back with the public in the fall. We then opened it up to general feedback, and then we had some really good breakout sessions where we had our engineers set up at different tables and got a lot of the detailed impact on, or questions on, what about the tree in front of my house, the driveway, mailbox, all those types of things, and we have good notes on that stuff. But the main feedback that we heard, general feedback, was to try and take a look at taking the sidewalk, which was right here with a 6-inch high granite curb, and moving it over to behind the wall. Unfortunately, the wall typically depicts, not all the time, but a lot of time, does depict where the right-of-way line is. So it puts the sidewalk on private property, which is why the design originally didn't show that without permission from any of the property owners. There's certainly some benefits highlighted below. You get the buffer, cyclist comfort, because you're removing that vertical granite curb, reduce wall impact, and you'll reduce the construction costs a bit through less drainage infrastructure and granite curb. So what we did was take a real high level, we didn't get into the details too much with this, but took a real high level look at, there's about 750 feet just east of Fox Hill Drive, where there's a permanent easement there today, and there's a dirt track, dirt path behind the wall. And in this area, it looks like a great opportunity to have this for about 10% of the project. So what we did next was took a look at these 3 challenges right here: wetlands, topo, and location of houses. So if houses were set close to the road, we didn't look in those areas. If the roadway dropped off significantly, or vice versa, you had a steep slope, we didn't look at those areas. And of course, if wetlands came up to the stone wall, we didn't look at those areas. Once we ruled out all those areas, we came up with an absolute maximum of about 1,500 feet. And again, this would have to be looked at really closely, but more importantly, it would require 5 takings from private property to make that happen. So one thing to point out here too is where we show a 5-foot sidewalk easement, that's the absolute best case. That, I apologize, that should really say like a range from like 5 to 15 feet, because in a lot of places there's trees behind the stone wall, so the sidewalk may do this, which means the swath of land will be much wider. So while there are some great benefits, the challenges are pretty significant to propose this. And that's it.
Do you want to talk about what the public reaction commentary was? I wasn't there, so I'm just looking
Yeah,
for a little bit of an update.
I think leaving that meeting, I think Mike could echo my same thoughts, and I know Mr. Walsh was there as well. I thought it was a very positive vibe. I think the thoughts regarding putting the sidewalk behind the rock wall kind of steered the meeting a different way. And I think those thoughts were brought up from residents, quite frankly, not living on Gay Street. And it's a great thought, I understand.
It doesn't
but
seem practical.
I just think that, well, of the homeowners that were there, they weren't the ones driving the meeting this way, and the meeting wasn't intended to steer that way. It is a good thought, but after looking at the numbers, we're looking for some guidance from the Board of Selectmen as well. I mean, you could look more heavily into this and approach the homeowners on Gay Street to try to pick up 1,500 feet, potentially. Or we
It seems
could-
like high overhead, low return, to chase 5 takings for 1,500 square feet.
And also the value of those takings too. We just went through Clabber
Right.
Street, we went through to a much smaller scale off of Forbes Road, the Safe Routes to School project, and you're talking tens of thousands of dollars. I can imagine what Gay Street would entail. That said, there is, like Mike had mentioned, there's already an existing stone walkway that isn't much of anything right now, stone dust walkway, sidewalk. And you're gonna pick up 750 feet there to try to meander in and out. I personally, I don't think it's a good idea. But
Well, I gotta say, I mean, so this morning, I am down at Falmouth and I ran on the street, and it crosses 3 times. And it's very dangerous. I mean, and that's at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's still dangerous. So I think the one side is the way it has to go for safety. If we're putting it in for safety, number one,
Right.
and to not have multiple crossings, I think is the only way to go. With that said, I mean, we could always ask, people if, on Gay Street, would they, if they're behind it, would they be willing to do something behind it? I mean, if they say no, then it's just no, but,
yeah,
I mean, people hear the word takings and get nervous.
sure.
A lot of times they're friendly takings. In other words, we get it assessed, we reach an agreement and we pay. So-
Right. I think too, like, a lot of the times that we have a 30% presentation, great thoughts are brought up, and this certainly is a great thought. I just don't want the message to get out to the public that this is where we're steering this thing now, behind the rock wall, because that certainly is not our intention. It's not the case currently.
Didn't start that way either, so.
Correct. So I just, again, guidance from the Board of Selectmen would be greatly appreciated if you guys want to pursue the 5 properties, potentially,
Yeah, I don't. I mean, but again, I have not been that deeply involved. I will tell you, I mean, just thinking of the projects we've done over the past couple of years, the stretch along High Street heading towards north looks nice. I guess I'm not a big fan of this meandering effect of some of it's outside the wall, some of it's inside the wall. I mean, I think, too, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, the driver behind this was safety. So I guess I'm just curious, I'm not a safety expert, but it would seem to me that the consistent topography would be the safest course. Maybe it has no impact or some impact. I'm just thinking of kids walking along a street and then you're behind a wall, you're in front of a wall. So that's my initial pass. I do think, we could go down the path of takings and we'll find 4 or 5 or 3 or 5 will do it, and we're down these processes that we're not really advancing the ball. But I know there's plenty of members of the public and the planning board here. I'm curious to hear from them.
I've got a few questions.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Hyde?
I would agree, for 20% of the project, it doesn't appear to be a starter. But I want to go back, we're the road commissioner, so I want to go back to the 10 feet versus 11 feet and talk about the road safety versus the sidewalk safety. I know that's the conversation, but tell me, can you give me a comparison of another road in Westwood that is down to that 10-foot travel lane? Is it Clapboard Tree, or is that down to 9?
Marked
Tight.
nine.
Give me a comparable
Blackwood's 9.
to
Blackwood
10.
tree, I believe, is closer to 10 in some areas, but I can't give you an exact.
Can you
exact
tell me what would
How
be like
about-
10 feet?
How about Canton Street?
Canton Street would be comparable in some of those choked out, yeah, some
Yeah,
of the,
10 foot.
yep,
Yep.
some of the areas by the islands.
And experts, what does 1 foot difference make in travel speeds?
It's a traffic calming mechanism.
It is,
For
it's
sure.
used,
Yeah.
yeah, if you look at Forbes Road and how that came out, with
So
just,
11 down to 10
Mhm.
makes a
Yeah,
significant
that's- sure.
difference.
Yes.
I-
Yeah.
I can just tell you, yes.
Okay, so I want to sort of ponder that a little bit further, but I have a different question for you. I have seen sidewalks installed in areas where there's no granite curbing, there's raised, and then there's a curving down to the grade of the roadway. Newly built, newly constructed. So what it does is, I don't know, it provides that elevation for the bikes, for the runners, for the walkers, but it doesn't involve probably the expense of curbing. What's your experience, expertise in that as an alternative?
So with, you mean like a asphalt?
A raised bed.
Like a raised,
Yeah.
yeah. So the,
It's all asphalt.
yep, the, one is the maintenance is definitely a challenge. If Brandon's hitting them with plows. You could
Well,
chip
you-
up the curb, you know, and, you know, with the granite, it's gonna last much longer, than the asphalt. But if it's sloped too, it's not gonna provide as much of a vertical protection. With the granite, it's a good hard edge. It provides a much more significant buffer for the pedestrians.
So maybe it was done at a cost savings?
What's that?
Maybe where I saw it was done at a cost.
Probably is a
savings
cost
Cost
savings,
savings,
yes, yes.
yeah.
to be able to get more, because it's substantial bike path area where they're miles long,
Yeah.
not just from Hanlon School to Deerfield Avenue
Right.
distance. Okay, yeah, I still want to think about the 10, I see the data that shows that the 10-foot has a benefit from the other implications, the trees, you know, other disruption that this would create, so it's preferable that way. I guess I'd like to talk to you guys offline a little bit more about the 10-foot versus 11-foot. And I definitely, the idea of a sidewalk inside, outside, I think you're exactly right. People will just stay on the outside and they won't go on the inside for that part. And it's just sending mixed signals that don't make any sense to the public at large.
Can the 5-foot sidewalk accommodate new plantings?
It'd be tight. It would be tight. There may be some areas at the back
Yeah.
where there's a space, like this isn't a good representation, but if the stone wall's set back, you could do something maybe at the back.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of how to mitigate any cutting of trees.
Okay, anything
Thank you.
else? Any other questions? Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Is there any public comment?
Sure. Does any members of the public want to be heard on this issue at all? I mean, we had the public hearing, but yes, Ms. Conant.
I just have a question.
Yes.
I was doing some research last night, and back in 2010, there was a path that was created for both, to connect both sides of town. What happened to that path?
You're talking about the path near Fox Hill Street? Along Gay?
Yes, well, it goes down there behind Inland.
Steve, you know about that. Is Debbie talking about the path that's along Gay Street from Fox Hill Street,
Yeah, the one.
Heading
that's
towards-
Yeah,
heading towards
Behind
Sandy
the
Valley
stone
Road?
The one behind the stone wall stops at Thatcher Street and goes to the corner of Fox and Gay Street. Then it goes up
Fox
Fox
Mile.
all the way.
That's
to-
just a dirt path, right?
It's a cinder path, yes. It was, we got the easement for it, and then we got the developer to actually create the path. And the deal was in lieu of them building sidewalks on both sides of the streets on that.
In the Fox Hill development?
Fox Hill development, they would actually build the path. And of course, the problem has been maintaining it.
And wasn't that to connect back to Lowell Woods?
So, yeah, so if you go onto the sidewalks on the Fox Hill development, then there is a connection to Lower Woods.
So it's kind of a recreational
Yeah.
path
Absolutely.
versus connecting the two villages.
Yeah, it doesn't serve that purpose because you have to walk through the woods, you have to go out of the way. From Gay Street, you have to go up Stanley Valley Road to get to the trails, or start at the Hanlon School and go behind it, across the field, and then pick up the trails, and it's, out of the way, and then eventually you end up having come back down Fox Hill to get to Gay Street. So it's not, it's a recreational use, it's not a good path for people to get back and forth.
Not public safety driven.
Yes, sir. Do me a favor, I have been asked to make sure that you use a microphone, just so I can record, so if you don't mind. Thank you. Come right up, that's fine.
Todd, can you just,
Slide it, thank you.
Shall I pick this up?
As long as you just tip it up, I think you can.
Okay, great.
Pick up your voice.
Michael Kraft, I'm chairman of the Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Committee. I live at 30 Coach Lane. First, a point of interest, Connie Rizzoli was here earlier asking for the mini walk approval. My son was actually the first one to organize that at the temple for his bar mitzvah project. So I'm glad that it's still going on. I'm very happy about that. First, I want to thank Todd, the DPW, Tech, and the Board of Selectmen for considering this. This is a spectacular project from the standpoint of pedestrian bike safety. Very much in support of that. Pedestrian Bike Committee is in unanimous support of building a sidewalk. We also are in unanimous support of whatever is decided as far as whether behind the wall or in front of the wall in terms of the sidewalk being built. But we did at our last meeting unanimously ask that at least it be considered for behind the wall, as that can provide some benefits in terms of the pastoral beauty of the neighborhood. We know that that's a deep concern of many individuals, but we've also been assured many times by Todd and the crew that there are other means of reducing the impact, the negative impact on the pastoral beauty of the street. So whatever is decided is important to us, but we do want them to give adequate consideration to all options. We support the narrower street based upon the expression of safety that we've heard, that a narrower street does add to traffic calming. I do want to just be sure, though, because we both represent pedestrians and cyclists. Cyclists are more typically using the roadway, that there's be enough adequate right-of-way so that cyclists can pass safely down Gay Street should they be on the street itself. I think we also support the entire sidewalk being on the north side, but I do have a question for the experts here, which is, in terms of no pedestrian crossings, we have the whole neighborhoods that come up the Thatcher Street or the Milk Street access points, and whether or not there wouldn't still be a crosswalk at some location to permit the people who live south of Gay Street to be able to access the north side, to be able to get to the sidewalk. And that's basically it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Dave.
Hi, Dave Atkins. I'm the chairman of the planning board, and all the other members are here who can offer their own opinions as well. But I know I attended a number of these meetings, and we reviewed this at our last meeting, and we're 100% in favor of the whole sidewalk idea. And I think everyone is in agreement about if it can be all on one side of the street to eliminate those pedestrian crossings, it clearly be safer. Also, reducing the width of the travel lanes will slow down cars. There's concerns about it makes it tighter, but it also, the sections of Gay Street now, such as between Thatcher and Milk, it's a raceway because it's so wide, and I'm routinely, I get passed by cars when I'm only going 40 and they want to go 60 along there. So I do want to kind of bring us back, though, to the idea that it's not just about building a sidewalk. It is about connecting the two villages of the town. And I have just thought about this a couple of weeks ago. I took a ride on my bike up to Walden Pond, and I drove through Wellesley and Weston and Lincoln, and I observed how there are sidewalks separated from the roadway there. And it's beautiful, it's bucolic, it's the way it's been for hundreds of years up there. And I feel like we have an opportunity here, a once in a lifetime opportunity, to get this right. And I think that if the vision I had originally in thinking of this was more of a meandering path, of a way to get from one side of town to the other safely. And if there's a way to do that that's protected by stone walls, maybe the walls could be moved over towards the road a little bit, I don't know. That would, it would fit more with that idea of building something that's not just a sidewalk, but it is a connection between the parts of the town. And it's something that our other towns around here that are more urban were not able to do. I mean, if you look at Needham, you have interesting situations over there. As I'm riding my bike or running in Needham, it's tight. It's they have a lot of people over there active, but they don't have the space for these kinds of paths beside the road. Dedham, you know, they're trying to get a rail trail. It's very contentious, and you know, Westwood has all this wonderful real estate that is in a rural state. And right now, you can appreciate it by driving by really fast. And so I would like to encourage that as we continue this process of design, we really need to see what the alternatives are, what is possible here, because we're building something for the future. You know, it's going to be, we do this, and then it's going to be there for 100 years. And we want this to be the best looking, and the best experience for people. So it's not simply, can I get from one side of town to the other on a sidewalk, but what is that experience like? You know, people from Hanlon walking over to the library want that to be a pleasurable experience. I think if it has to go weave in and out, I don't think that would be that complicated or unsafe. I think it's all how you design it. So I think the engineers are the best at designing this, but I want us to keep our minds open to this possibility and present. I think you'd have to go to each resident and say, here's what it looks like if we do a sidewalk on the street, and here's, if you would let us go behind the stone wall, move the stone wall, adjust this is what it could look like. I think what I see in my mind as a vision of that is a more rural, bucolic, ideal setting than just what you kind of think of as a concrete sidewalk. So I just want everyone to, I hope we can keep this design process considering both these options. Clearly, having it on one side of the street is something everybody agrees on. Thanks.
Yes, Steve.
So I just want to point out the three things here, to reasons to put the sidewalk behind the stone wall. Number, safety, aesthetics, and cost. So safety, if you look at there's the 10-foot one. The sidewalk is right alongside the road with a curb. You definitely need that curb, but still, no one's going to feel really safe with cars going by just a couple of feet away, nothing between them but that granite curb. You put them behind the stone wall, then they really feel safe. They got a whole stone wall. The distance away from the street is there. They're away from the noise. They're away from the dust, and it's so much more pleasant. They feel safe. They are safe. So you're going to get more usage if you put the sidewalk behind the wall. Second thing is aesthetics. We want to keep the road looking the way it is now. You put a sidewalk there, there's no way it's going to look like it is now. It's not going to have that rural effect. When you put it behind the wall, it's not even noticeable from the road. You're going to be able to maintain the aesthetics the way they are. The homeowner might think, okay, I have a sidewalk in front of my house now, but the sidewalk will be laid even with the land, and it can go up and down a little bit depending with the topography. So I don't think it'll be that noticeable. And then they have the option to put more bushes between the sidewalk and their house, even a fence if they think it's that important. But then there's the cost. As I pointed out, not only are you saving the granite curbing, when you put in granite curbing, you need a stormwater system, which means catch basins. It means the pipes to connect them, storm scepters to clean it, and then it has to go somewhere. Probably the detention basin required. You have to meet the water quality standards. So it gets pretty complicated and pretty costly. And even the ones where they have the sidewalk, they notice some of them are moving the stone wall. The stone wall has to be raised. That one shows the stone wall even with the top of the granite curbing, which is 6 inches above the current surface of the road. The wall is not as much lower than that now. So to do any raising, any moving of the wall, that involves changing all the topography, means you're going onto the people's property anyway and changing the height of their land. So to do it would be the least amount of disturbance putting it behind the wall. You have the advantage you can maneuver around, meander around trees, save as many trees as possible. So for those three reasons, I think it's a much better idea to do it wherever possible. If you can't get it everywhere, if you have people that, you know, just absolutely won't do it, but, you know, the town does have the power to take it by eminent domain if they want to. And it is something that I feel is for the betterment of everyone, so it is legitimate. But if you want to do that, if you can't do that and you have to have it meandering, it'll be a smooth path so that people will stay on the sidewalk. They'll follow it. There'll be a nice transition from one to the other. And I guarantee anyone walking along the road will be much happier when they get behind the wall as opposed to when they get those sections along the road. They'll be just dying to get back behind the wall again.
Thanks, Steve.
So do we have any idea how many houses would be impacted, you know, behind the wall or in front of the wall?
Once we looked at these first three, you know, if it was a house that was set close to the road, if the topography didn't allow it to the wetlands, I think we were looking at about 5 properties to get to the 1,500 feet.
Yeah, I think we have to all kind of reconcile that this is a street that has never had sidewalks or continuous sidewalks, and the street is going to change. And town meeting kind of set the approval to go forward with a process, right? So now we're just trying to figure out the best way. I mean, my sense is, you know, is there a recommendation, Mike, from the administration? What is the recommendation of where we go?
Personal recommendations?
Well, you're the subject matter experts. I mean, what would you do?
I mean, I think 1A is the one that they're recommending.
Yeah, 1A
Okay.
would definitely be the option. I think where we're spinning our wheels a little bit is this rock wall and behind the rock wall, and I keep going back to the notion that it's great, the concept is great, but I'm pretty confident that those 5 residents feel a little bit differently. I mean, I don't.
But again, we're talking 1,500 feet out of, how big is the project? How many feet?
About a little over 7,500, and that's not a consecutive 1,500 feet either. That's kind of spots. You know.
And I would also be curious, not that we're gonna start running appraisal numbers right now, but the cost savings generated from the granite curbing that you're saving, I would think that the appraisals might come in pretty close to that, if not a little bit more, just for rough calculations based on what we've experienced elsewhere and the property values along Gay Street County.
What about the suggestion of moving the wall closer to the street and then putting the sidewalk on the public way?
Could do that. I'd be a little bit nervous that in doing so, you're infringing on that right of way. The construction necessary to do that removal of the existing. And Mike could answer better, but I think that could be a potential issue.
Yeah, I mean, that was, at the first 2 meetings, that was one of the biggest hurdles we heard was moving the wall. And in some cases, the wall is either set right at the property line or it's inside the right-of-way line. So areas where it would get reset to the property line. Moving it forward towards the road would take it off of the property line. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, you have a recommendation. I mean, I think from my senses, there's been some coalescing around that. And just be cognizant of these other ideas that, you know, as you move forward, you're only at 30%, may come into some sort of reality. You know, I don't think we have to set something in stone tonight. I think 1A is where we are, and we should proceed.
Yeah,
I don't know if anybody thinks
personally,
differently.
I like the 1A. I mean, based on all the numbers, it seems to be the most logical. I guess I never rule out, as Steve said, if we can keep the aesthetics, which is, you know, probably the #1 complaint when we said we were gonna put a sidewalk, that if we can meander it, and I take back, there's a road on the way to the Carroll School that my son went to for 3 years, and the sidewalk comes out, it goes back in behind the properties and behind some of the walls, and I know what Steve is saying is, you know, the bicycle, people were using it, you know, women pushing and men pushing carriages, you know, so they felt safer when it's back there, and I understand exactly what Steve's saying. I just think that it's a possibility we should at least look at it. Maybe we, you know, talk to these property owners and that's absolute no, and at least we know, okay, that's out.
Yeah, it's something we can certainly do.
As you go from 30% design forward, what are these steps that happen? Because I know it doesn't come back until higher design level, but do you get to places where you say, I've got to get clarification as to how to move forward next?
Yes.
What should we expect? So-
It helps. I mean, it helps. I mean, I think if the next step were to talk to the few property owners where it's feasible, that would certainly help guide the design, because as Mike mentioned, no is
Yeah.
No.
potentially no.
But I guess, when I hear the discussion, I get a sense that each of us in our mind is creating our own visual of what we think it's going to look like. That it would look more approachable if it was consistent on one side of the wall, or some of us think it's worth to put it on the other side, and that won't impact people's usage. And I'm just wondering, how do we get to a place where we get one vision? Like, can we see conceptual design? Do you have graphic ability or something to show us so we can say, oh, wow, we really do want it to go behind the wall for the following reasons? I mean, Steve, in his words, depicted something that is interesting, as did Dave, but at the same time, we all are saying we'd like to see this happen. So we don't want to get so bogged down in the detail that we had a nice discussion, but we get nothing. That would be the worst part of us not having the same vision, is that we end up nowhere.
Yeah, we can definitely create conceptual slides. Obviously, nothing is going to be exactly what it was, but
No, but to help us get around one
Right.
common thought.
I think every area is a little different.
Yeah.
So it's got so much character. There's different, areas.
But if you
without-
did a slideshow and you had pictures and you could either more specifically describe, because I know when I've gone by, there's some very hilly area right to the wall.
right.
And then there's some that's flatter and the trees are going out. So maybe we just need to be more specific as to where along the way. And I don't know, I just want us all at the end of the day to be saying, this is the best we can do, these are the resources we have,
Right.
and we can get it done. That ultimately is the whole thing. If we hit, let's get stonewalled for a pun.
Yeah.
And we just get in our own way. I
Right.
just would hate to see us lose the opportunity altogether.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, can you advance from tonight the 6,000 square feet that doesn't seem to be in contention, right? And show some sort of hypothetical with this 1,500 square feet. And I do think we need to align on one thought, though. If it so happens, which I wouldn't bet money that it does, but if 5 of these homeowners greet you at the door and say, this sounds great, I'm in, that's one thing. But I don't want to go down the path of eminent domain for this purpose. I think that would be a little aggressive from where we started as a goal. So I would be curious if others agree.
I agree with you 100%, because I think that we have positive momentum right now
Right,
for a project
right.
that, quite frankly, was in question years ago. We brought to town meeting initially a survey concept with, rightfully so, there was some argument against it. Then we came back the following town meeting and went for design with some more argument. And these are abutters on Gay Street. So these aren't the people that are, I mean, these are the people actually, quite frankly, that you're gonna have to knock on their door and say, are you okay with this sidewalk? And.
But I think, Todd, I feel like 6,000 square feet are 80% of the project. I feel like we have general alignment here and with you three. And maybe I'm overstating that, I don't know, but that's my sense. So I guess if we can, I know it's hard because it's one project, but continue the momentum and just kind of take a sidetrack on this other,
So, Mike, can you design the 6,000 square feet that we know that were already there, right? And the other 1,500, a Plan A and a Plan B? You know what I mean, for that
Yeah,
1,500
and
square feet?
We'll be as flexible as possible.
Yeah.
And the challenge is when you design it, though, you're designing it as a corridor.
Right.
Right.
The way the program works, it's going as a corridor, and the spots that are in question are kind of here, then here, then here. So it does, it can affect efficiency in some of the things, but we'll be as flexible
Yeah,
as you
I
need
mean,
us.
because if you gave us, okay, the property owner is cooperating, the property owner is not cooperating. So,
Right.
what are the alternatives for those 5 areas?
Right, I mean, looking at the 3 challenges, so keep going to the wetlands, the topo, I mean,
Right.
those are pretty
Yeah.
black or white, you know, that's what it's gonna
Right,
look like.
exactly.
The location of houses, I mean, that's subjective, that's subjectively looking at it. I mean, if that were my house, I probably wouldn't want the sidewalk closer to my
And I
house.
think, and the other piece too is relocating wetlands, right? So it gets complicated as we go down this process. So it's a simple vetting, right? Like if you get 5 excited residents who are like, we're in, then maybe we should proceed. If you find that this is like not going well, maybe we just step back. Does that make sense? Is that, I don't want to speak for anybody, is that?
No, I think it's fine. I think we've all given our 2 cents as to which way we kind of hope them to go. Nance, do you want to say something
Yeah,
else?
I'm just trying to get a sense of people who took the time to be here. Not seeing anybody ready to yell at us, but if you want to, now's the good time. Better to do it now than tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you
We're all
guys
doing
very
the best
much.
we
Thank
can,
you,
right?
gentlemen. Are you,
Thank you.
Brendan and Todd, you staying?
And I did want to say one thing while you're up here. The intersection of Clapboard Tree and Washington Street is amazing.
Amazing.
And the intersection at North and 109 is
Lovely
awesome.
brick.
And it's been great to see people from out of town commenting on social media.
And yet observe the date. Today it's July 23rd. Those projects are already in the
I
books.
know.
Done, lined, everything.
They're
It's
really
fabulous.
such great enhancements to the town, so thank you all.
Take it, Mike. All right, next we have Waste Zero Curbside Textile Recycling for our residents.
So, this program was brought to us by Steve Lisowskis. I'm going to turn it over to him in a couple minutes, but essentially the program would bring another option for recycling to the residents. The program would offer education and a complete rollout for the bags needed for this program. But essentially what it's going to be is another option on your curbside biweekly recycling, where you have an option to also get picked up, free to the town, might I add, any recyclables that you can offer and get out of our recycling stream and our trash stream, quite honestly.
Can I stop you there for just 1 second?
Yep.
So does that mean we get another bin to put out?
None of the bin, you'll get a bag. So every resident will get a bag that they're able to put these textiles in, put it outside, just along with your recyclables that will get picked up by Simple Recycling.
And where do you get extra bags? You get a supply or?
Steve, I think Steve's gonna hit on all this,
Okay.
so.
Getting ahead of ourselves, Steve.
That's good.
Why don't I just kick it off to him? The one thing I will say too, that's important to this piece is Waste Management has already been contacted and they're in full support of this program for the town as well. So with that said, I'll let Steve, kind of give a short little run through of this program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Waste Zero, we are a waste reduction company. We're actually a benefit corporation for the last 5 years. We've been one of the top 10 companies in the world for the environment, as certified by the B Labs, which certifies benefit corporations across the world. I, in particular, spend an awful lot of time in Massachusetts' trash data, which is surprisingly more interesting than that statement sounds. But one of the things that we've learned over the last several years is the Commonwealth requires of the waste energy facilities that they categorize their solid waste into 63 different categories. 4 years ago, textiles, so shoes, belts, clothes, bedspreads, pillows, drapes, things like that, made up 6.7% of our solid waste. Last year, it made up almost 11% of our solid waste. Textiles and textile-related items are a growing percentage of our solid waste stream. That is related both to changes in fashion, to so to speak fast fashion, where you use thinner and lower quality material to make up clothing and other textiles, but also constantly where people are recycling more paper, for instance, so that it goes down as a percentage while textiles go up. But roughly speaking, 1 in every 9 tax dollars that are being spent to dispose of solid waste in Massachusetts is disposing of jeans, sweaters, drapes, bedspreads, and other things, 95% of which can have another life. So that's what you'll see behind you. And if have you they receive a copy of the presentation?
Yeah,
Yeah, we have it on.
Okay. So just moving on to the next page, this is a quick financial analysis for the town of the program, but I'm gonna skip that. We can come back to it to the extent it's of interest to you, because I know there's some questions on receipt of extra bags. As you can see in the paper presentation on page 5, on your presentation in your packet on page 17, for anyone who'd like presentations, there are some sitting behind me here. You can see the pink bag. So Simple Recycling, they are a dedicated textiles recycling company. We Waste Zero, because we live in the trash data, and we do about 143 waste reduction programs here in Massachusetts, about nearly 1,000 nationally with cities and towns. We saw textiles changing from that 6.7% to closer to the 11%. We saw it as a highly unaddressed section of the solid waste and recycling stream. It's one of the top 5 contaminants in single stream recycling, along with plastic film and other things. There's no way to address it in Massachusetts. So we found Simple Recycling. They're based in Ohio, and all they do is collect and recycle textiles. That's what they live and breathe. Fascinating program and a pretty interesting company. What they do is they will, before the program begins, send every resident 3, before the program begins, they'll send 2. In total, they'll send 3 pieces of literature to residents. The very first one is just a mailer, a card that goes out and says, hey, this program is coming to Westwood. The second is another mailer that explains the program and includes 2 of the pink bags. As people set out the pink bags for collection, so in my house, that pink bag sits on the way to the garage, and shoes go in there and other things go in there, and the kids are at that age where a bunch of stuff goes in because they're transitioning, thankfully. And when I'm done with that, I just put it out on the curb on my recycling day. Simple Recycling comes along and there's a pink bag sitting there, and if there's 2 pink bags, they take the 2 pink bags, and then the person who's in the van peels off 2 bags and ties it to my mailbox, to the post for my mailbox, or if my recycling cart is out that week, which it typically is, they'll tie it to the handle of my recycling cart, the resident handle, not the hook handle for semi-automated collection. So it's a pretty straightforward. If somebody's doing a clean out of their home, they can call the toll-free number for Simple Recycling or send them an email. The next morning, they'll drop off more bags. You can ask for 30 bags, you can ask for 1 bag. It's up to residents. So it's a really high level of service. Any day you can recycle with your recycling cart, you can recycle the pink bags. If you have Monday collection and it gets pushed for a snow day, this gets pushed as well. It's designed to mirror your recycling program. Was that responsive, Mrs. Hyde, to your question?
That's great.
You answered a couple that hadn't put out there yet, so that was great.
I had a question for you. So what happened, so I'm looking at the size of this bag going, I don't know if a king-size comforter would fit in one of those bags.
Yeah, how big are the bags?
Any idea how big they are?
They're roughly 30 gallons, so,
Yeah,
yep.
it might fit.
So in that instance, if something is too large, residents can use any bag and either put it alongside a pink bag. That's what we would recommend, is you put it next to it. We typically don't, we'd want to work that out with Public Works, just because you have a containerized system. You may want to avoid anything outside. Most containerized communities say it's only in the pink bag. So in that instance, we may be able to work something out with dispatch and figure it out.
What happens with contamination in these pink bags? I mean, it's the big issue with recycling these days.
It is actually budgeted for. So there's a fairly constant, well, I shouldn't say fairly constant. In Massachusetts, there's a fairly constant level of contamination. In different states, there are other levels of contamination. But it is budgeted for, and it's not something that comes back to you in any way. You're not back charged for contamination. You probably won't even find out that you had contamination. We expect, Simple Recycling expects it and budgets for it.
So explain to me a benefit corporation and where you fit in versus the collection agency.
Sure.
Why is there multi-layered here?
Sure. So it's not many layers. It's one. So the first question first. No, what B Corp is not a layer. So what a B Corporation is, or B Corp is, there's an entity called the B Lab, the Benefit Lab, essentially. And what they do is they look at companies in a variety of ways, how they treat their workforce, how they, in our instance, the benefit they produce to the environment. And they go through all your policies, your procedures, your operations, your capital spending, your operational spending, the benefits you provide to employees, what percent have health insurance, what percent elect 401k when 401k is offered. They go through all that stuff to determine your social score in the environment for your workforce treatment and other things. And so many thousands of companies go through this certification process to be certified as a B Corp and then be ranked in various categories of B Corp certification. And so we go through that process and have for the last 5 or 8 years or something along those lines. And for the last 5 years have been certified as one of the top 10 companies in the world for the environment based on Waste Zero's work through the variety of programs that we implement for solid waste and recycling.
Just so I understand better, what's your revenue model?
So that gets to your second question, which is the layers. So Simple Recycling is the operator. They collect the bags, they recycle the material. That's what they do. What the relationship between Waste Zero and Simple Recycling is, Simple Recycling, we're a waste reduction company. So we manufacture. So let me back up. Our revenue model is we manufacture the bags and handle the mailers and communication with residents. Why do we manufacture bags? We manufacture bags because when you price solid waste, like when you price water, electricity, natural gas, and other things, prices drop. Consumption drops. So, for instance, when you submeter a multifamily unit, even today, you'll see about a 32% reduction in water usage, even today. Now, when I grew up 30 years ago, when I was, paying attention to these things more than I do now, because I've learned the lesson, it was don't waste water, don't waste water, don't waste water. But after 40 years of education, still you submeter an apartment building, you see a 32% reduction in water because pricing matters. So when you price solid waste and say it's $1 for this bag, you see on average a 44% reduction in solid waste. Those are the programs we specialize in and manufacture the bags for. Pay-as-you-throw, overflow, recycling bag programs, segregation of glass, segregation of plastic film, segregation of hard-to-recycle plastics, and then the subsequent recycling of that material. That's all stuff that we do. But most communities aren't interested in doing all those things. Some are interested in just the textiles program, and some are interested in getting their plastic film out of their recycling, and some are interested in getting the glass out so it doesn't contaminate the cardboard. What we're talking about here is just one of the many programs that we support cities and towns in doing. And so our revenue model is we manufacture the bags for Simple Recycling. You never pay for them. The residents never pay for them. Simple Recycling pays for them because it's their vehicle for collection and keeping the materials clean and dry.
And then they, in turn, get revenue from the collections and how they distribute it.
They from a revenue perspective, they lose money on the collection, but it's their job to maximize the recycling and the end use of the material.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's very helpful.
Yes, ma'am.
New concept.
Sounds great.
Who found who here? You found us? They found you?
We found each other.
I'm just really curious.
Good
I mean,
answer.
Always a safe answer.
We know, this is clearly an issue. We've got a couple of recycling bins newly located in town in the past year collecting textiles for different distribution to users or recycling purposes, both of which are great, and people are starting to be aware, but this would make it town-wide, not remove that, because that still has a place, and, helping the institutions that are allowing the collection bins to be there. This just makes it town-wide, and that's a pretty amazing opportunity. So,
These two found each other. I'll say Brendan did a great job finding, and then
well, good.
vice versa.
This
So-
program also too, I mean, we, as you know, we do 2 recycling days.
Special
in the
recycling,
spring.
yeah.
And textiles is one of the materials that we recover that day.
Mm.
And this relationship would be able to supply us for that day. I think numbers would probably go down based on the option for people to have it on their bi-weekly basis, but, just another avenue for this company to support us as well.
What's the downside?
We get money back too, that's the other
No,
thing.
$20 a
Oh, well,
ton
that's
or
a
something.
downside, huh?
So that's the good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. No, I'm
Somebody
just,
has to appropriate.
it sounds like a win-win situation, so I'm just wondering if there was anything.
I think initially administratively, there's a downside because people, regardless, they're gonna handle all the phone calls and the inquiries, but it's still gonna come.
Getting
to
us
town
used to it.
hall, It's gonna come to Public Works.
Mhm,
And it's
fair
getting
enough.
that message out that if there is a scheduling conflict of some sort or anything that they need attention, it's gonna have to be deferred.
And how quick can we get this up and running?
Typically, the start is 8 weeks. I think we're going to be able to compress that based upon the work we've been doing thus far. The town, Public Works is incredibly responsive, so I think that will allow us to compress
That's because
that.
they got their road projects done, so now they've got to fill their time, right?
Yeah, Summer Street's being done this week, that's the last one.
All right, thanks, guys.
Did you get that reverse call tonight?
So I can get a date.
That they can do in their sleep. It's those other ones that were really complicated.
So, if the board is inclined to move, to approve this project, and we can start doing work ahead of execution of a contract, which would compress the start to perhaps 4 weeks.
So that was my only question. So, all right, so let's say that we all agree, and I'm not gonna say what the answer is yet, but let's say we all agree. How long do we do this for as like a test? I mean, what is the, time that we test it? Is there, before we sign a contract for a long term?
So I'll give you the spectrum, which is outside Massachusetts, communities typically will sign for 10 years because they want to guarantee that $20 a ton of revenue for as long as possible. In Massachusetts, communities have, for obvious reasons, typically will execute 3-year contracts. There are there's one community that has executed a 1 year with a renewable 3, just because they wanted, actually, I think their policy is they only do 1-year contracts initially. So I know there had been some questions asked of me as to the ability to do a 1 year initially versus a 3 plus a renewable 3. It's your choice. Simple Recycling is happy to support you in any configuration that the town feels comfortable moving forward with.
Do you guys have a recommendation?
Just a note too, Michelle has been included in one of the meetings that we've had, moving forward, Michelle Miller, the procurement officer, just so that she was aware of this. She could have, questions answered by Steve. And from my memory, and we'll have to, revisit that with Michelle, but from my memory, she was speaking more of a 1 year with an option to renew.
But I
As
think
a
for
requirement, or
us.
she thought that was a good idea, just to,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
as a, are we set that we can only do 1 year, or what is she basing that on?
No,
Just a
I
good
think,
idea?
I think it was just, for her standpoint, looking out for the town, where it's a new company coming in to do work and business with us.
Safest way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, but I think for the board, we should approve the program and then let the staff work out the details.
I agree.
I don't wanna, you know what I mean? That's up to you.
No, I don't think that's what's being put before us. I think you're
Okay.
right.
So I propose that the board approve the biweekly curbside textiles recycling program as presented this evening.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
I think it's
Thank
great.
you all.
Thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great. Okay. Moving along now to our new business, Chief Deckers. So Chief, I happen to know this route since when I'm really tired running, I take this path to get back into my neighborhood instead of running all the way down Canton Street.
Get your way back home?
Yeah, it's a lot faster and probably saves me about a half a mile, so.
Okay. So, the reason I'm here tonight is, we're looking at a couple of different issues in town as we're doing our community risk reduction plan, and I basically tripped across this, path because we were actually dispatched to a fire on Strasser Ave. I was down on Route 1, I'm like, oh, it came up on my technology as a road. So I went that way, and obviously couldn't get through. So I had to go my.
Those big boulders will stop you
Yeah,
from getting
well,
through.
my car could have squeezed through there, but I was looking at, a fire truck, or in most cases, since over 85% of our work is EMS related, we're not getting an ambulance in there. And as I started to research a little bit further, I noticed that if, for whatever reason, whether it's gonna be the construction here in the fall, or it could just be heavy traffic, if there's a bottleneck at the East Street Bridge, our response time to this community goes from 4 minutes all the way up to 12 to 15-minute response time, which if you're having a heart attack is not a very good place to be. So when I looked at this quickly, I tried to figure out why the road wasn't connected back and through. When we worked through all that, we've come up with an idea, basically to put an emergency access road through here, do some modifications with DPW for curb cuts so we could actually get over this, restructure this a bit so that it would look almost identical except for the big boulders. We'd remove the boulders, and in the boulders' place would be gates. We would build the area around it so we could drive trucks over it, so we could maintain it, cut back some of the foliage a little bit so you have a straight path through, but there would be gates on either side to do that, which will only be open in case of an emergency. Which in the case coming up where we're gonna have 2 weekends where we're taking the bridge out, that whole road is gonna be closed for the entire weekend. That puts a tremendous risk in that part of town. That's a known risk. And then the unknown risk that could occur any day is an accident there, something that ties up that intersection. And if someone had a issue, the response time is just way too long. So I'm here tonight to ask you, because you guys are the road commissioners, to allow us to put that access road in that spot, and get your feedback on it.
I'm gonna say, I already thought it was an access road.
I did
already
too.
did. You know, haven't been in that neighborhood, and as I said, run through it. I'm like, all right, I thought that's what it was for.
Mhm.
The cut.
I guess for me though, I mean, I guess I'm struggling with the need for the gates.
So
Do
that
you not
nobody
think you
else-
get compliance with the signage?
So nobody else will use it.
Yeah,
I
well,
know that, but I mean.
I think in your
put up on
pack I
one-way
have the
streets, you know?
artwork. To your point, if you don't put something there, the curb cut on Forbes would have to be drivable. So what that will end up happening is people with motorcycles, scooters, cars, young kids with cars saying, hey, I can cut straight through here. They will.
Well, I mean, it's a hypothetical. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess, it just seems to me we're introducing 2 industrial gates into this really nice residential neighborhood. I'm just wondering if it's a thought of seeing if we get compliance before we immediately jump to gates. If we're not getting compliance, then we take the next step. But I just struggle with starting out with putting gates in.
The only reason I went with gates is to preserve the security and really the feel. I mean, if I was gonna do it the right way, I'd cut basically a full path in there. We would pave it and it would be wide open to
But today there's
get through
folks
there,
walking
but-
and running through that.
Yeah.
With 2 gates,
Especially kids for school
we've
in the morning.
eliminated that, right?
Because the big stones were put there for a reason.
Have we eliminated the ability to get through with the gates? Can't people still walk?
They can walk.
Yeah.
Are you gonna
Yeah.
accommodate that?
Yeah,
Are you
it's gonna be
pave
just a
around?
gate on the pathway.
It would just, where the pathway would be, we would gate the pathway so that we could get a truck through the gate. But I want to keep it secure for the community. I don't want to make it a car cut through so people can jump around and get into that community, but I also don't want to leave that community at risk.
You know, I think we're fine with the path. I think it's the immediate fallout.
There are gates at, behind the synagogue to get into Chase Estates.
Yep.
Right.
There's not a gate at Fox
they-
Hill. There's a simple chain across.
And we can put chains too.
Well,
I
what's
mean-
your access if it's a gate? How do you get through?
There's a
A truck's
key
coming
that-
along.
a key,
Oh,
we
you
would
have to
just get out-
manually get out and unlock it.
You know, but again, that,
It's not,
it doesn't take, it's a 4-minute response.
Yep.
You know, opposed to a 12 to 15-minute response. So it's still, you know, we might add 2 minutes to get through.
why don't you
that.
just look at what the options are if it's
Yeah,
not?
I just, you know, we have one-way streets in town. We don't have people driving down them every day. I mean, I would rather see some other forms of compliance before we just jump to installing 2 gates. I think we're all aligned. We need to make sure there's access.
Have you spoken with people in the neighborhood yet?
No, that's the plan. And we're not looking for approval tonight because we haven't spoken
Right.
to the
Right.
neighbors.
This
The
this
first
is
house-
really just an
Listen, if
FYI
Todd-
for you folks to
Yeah.
get,
We're-
to see what
we're
your
being asked to-
appetite is, because if you had no appetite as the road commissioners, there would be
So
no,
we're not being asked to
no
approve
point in
anything
speaking
Not
to-
approving tonight, we're getting your opinion and then going to see the neighbors.
John, if Todd gets those 5 people on Clapboard Tree to say, shake my hand, we got a deal, and you get all the neighbors to say, I want 2 gates, I'll stop.
Well, you don't necessarily have to have two gates either.
Just
You can
one
have
would
just
stop it,
one
yeah.
gate in the middle
Let's
of
wait
the
till we get
woods,
back.
and that, just keeping the traffic from going through.
The gate in the middle is ideal, because then it's just one set of get in, get out, and key in. The chains is even a better idea, but, you know, Steve brought up a very good point at one of the planning meetings, and to his concern is, in the middle of the night, when you're not really paying attention.
see the chain.
And you're driving down there with a bicycle,
You hit the
You
gate,
might pick
the
that
chain,
up, and
you hit the gate.
we're gonna have a medical call there, because you're gonna get picked up.
So I guess we don't have to decide tonight. It sounds like we're just trying to gather some ideas. I just, you know my preference, but you're gonna talk to the neighbors. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Michael's in charge.
It's taking them a little bit, when you are chair, it takes you a couple of months of not saying, but it happens. Yes,
We're all type
Ms.
As.
Conan, go ahead, you live in that neighborhood.
Too. So one of the biggest concerns is kids avoid Canton Street by riding their bikes and going through there, and that's gonna eliminate that for them.
They would still be able to ride around. What we would do is if we were to gate it, we wouldn't have to leave as much of the big stones. You could still make access for the kids for the bikes in the footpath. You just don't want a vehicle to be able to go down that path. That's my goal, to keep it only.
It sounded like you were gonna do the whole.
Yeah, no, the gate would be, pedestrians and bikes on both sides of the gate. There'd still be plenty of access on
They
both
would still
sides.
be able to get by. But, I mean, the other idea too, something that we did go is collapsible ballards. We could drive right over these ballards. And put them right down the middle, then people could, make a course out of the ballards too on their way. But you could do those right in the middle and just ballard it, so someone might get halfway down, then they're gonna realize. But my goal was not to give people even to get halfway down. I'm trying to keep it as aesthetically pleasing as it is now, but open up that path, because my big concern is that we can't get in there.
But you want to be able to get in there in September when the East Street Bridge gets closed.
Yes.
So you would want all this done by then, or you want to at least get
I
the
have a-
boulders out of the way?
Todd still here?
No,
No,
but
Todd is not.
Todd said it'd be 2 weeks.
Yeah, Todd gave me once we get the green light, within 2 weeks, he will have it done.
And who's got the funding, Mike?
Todd would come up with the funding.
So there's really only,
He's already got the gates. The gates are taken out of the cemetery, so.
property only.
We have common
four
thread
houses.
with tonight's discussions, public safety, recycling, repurposing, it's all
And
good.
basically what we would do there is, this is a better look. We would remove the big boulders. We would put a curb cut in so that our trucks can get over that, because right now our big trucks could, but our ambulances couldn't get over that curb, not without doing a lot of damage. We would basically pull up everything that's there down about a foot or 2 feet, put process down, repack that whole area. Then we would put a paved sidewalk back in, just a sidewalk, and then grass it over again. So that we could still drive it.
Yeah.
But that's the same look you would have, whether it be with ballards, a chain, or a gate.
I know we can repurpose the granite curbstone.
We would probably still be able to do granite, they would just be shorter.
That Downey Street there that's blocked off, there's no access through?
No, there's not.
Yeah, I looked and drove around, and like I said, we'd have to
couldn't
come
get a
down
car
the
through that.
highway, we gotta go up, there's a really good picture that we could pass around, and, we'd have to go down into Dedham, all the way around, back out on 128, come up onto East Street, down Canton, then pick it up. Or come down, Washington to Everett to Ford, and then that way, or all the way back around again. And it's a massive response time increase from that one day. And it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yes. You have a comment in the back?
Yes, I was gonna say, I know there is an access in between.
Can you come up just because, okay, thank you.
Name and address.
Sorry to make you, but
Oh, that's okay.
people at home not necessarily hear you, so. Thank you. Identify yourself just for the record,
Sure.
sir.
Fran Fusco, 20 Pine Lane. And I was going to mention, I know there is an access in between Little Boot Lane and Shoestring, and that's pretty nice aesthetically looking, and I don't know if you considered
There's no gates.
looking, no, there is no gates. So it might be something you might want to look at.
Thank you.
That's a good example, actually,
Mm.
yeah, I know that one.
Yes, Steve?
So I happen to live right up the street on Glandor Road, and so I'm very familiar with this. And there was some history here. I believe this is to be maintained as a path, open at all times. That was the original agreement for this. I believe the water district has a water line down there connecting. So but no traffic. And that was the original agreement whenever this was created. But the thing was, this is not a public right-of-way. It is, the public has this easement, so the property owners own to the middle of the path. And so one day I came out there and there were some nice trees there, and he was just cutting down the trees. And I asked him why, why, these aren't your trees? He says, yes, they are, they're his properties, and he can cut them down. So he cut them down, and you see all the scrub there on the left. That's what's grown in from when those nicer looking trees were cut down for whatever reason. And so it's a little bit of a problem with the maintenance. I know my wife and I always picking up trash there. It would be nice if the town really made this a public right-of-way, so that we had that control over it, so that you could maintain the trees properly, and rather than leave it up to the whims of the neighbors on either side of the property to do that.
Any
Again,
idea?
you're putting up a gate, you might have to talk to those two neighbors.
Any idea, Steve, how long it's been there?
Wow, when I heard about it when I moved in, which was, what,
Not a subdivision plan.
Is there a water
It's a
main?
private right-of-way, not a public right-of-way. So it's a right-of-way.
It's a right-of-way.
The picture before this, if you go back, Christina, who's the other
Is it
guy?
dead at Westwoods?
No, it's the continuation of the roadway.
You can see there's a fence. They've already fenced it off.
Yeah, so that,
Makes me wonder if it's still a private easement.
It's a
but
private
30
right-of-way.
30 years.
technically they own to the middle of the road. The middle, they own half, they own their half. And, because it was like a road that was never accepted. But the town has the easement to use it for utilities and for walking purposes only. So I think I think if we're gonna start doing something here, maybe we should just straighten this out and get it to be a real public, right-of-way, and so that the town can maintain those trees and,
Slippery slope, chief.
It's all about public safety.
Yeah, I mean, you need
Good
to make
answer.
your access road, and I go forward. I think it's just, that's the secondary stuff needs just some vetting.
so that's something just to, to think about while you do this.
I don't think the neighborhood would want that to be a public way where cars and vehicles were using it.
No, absolutely not.
He meant pedestrian.
No,
Just
again,
for the emergency.
I don't think
access.
you're allowed to do it. I think if you go back to the original easement, or whatever was created, there was something that was created there, says no automobiles, pedestrians only. That's what I seem to recall. That was way back.
Not down.
But I remember someone getting up
All right.
and saying, assuring
They'll
us.
look into it, but
There would be no
from a
automobiles.
public safety standpoint, we need to, allow you to make this
Ask the neighbors.
a faster access when necessary.
We have a meeting set up.
There's only two, right?
Four?
Yeah.
So we aren't doing
I
anything
said
that,
two is because the other
Not
one,
doing
Briar Lane, is in the
anything
middle.
that. With the four direct abutters and have a conversation with them. We already know that they've been informed and talked to, but we want to be in a room with them and have a conversation with them.
Just in case they have concerns that we can
I
personally
think it's important that they
address.
know that we aren't forcing this on
Right,
them.
yes,
right.
This
yes, yes.
board, having talked about it tonight,
That-
that
that's-
they have a chance to,
That's why we don't want you to take any action.
Right. Okay,
I do, I'm a neighbor.
Oh, okay.
sure. Come on up.
that's why you've been sitting there all night.
Yeah.
I thought it was just the intensity of our meeting that you would come and see us.
Beth Murphy, I live on Forbes, so I'm just curious as if emergency vehicles are going through, since it is a narrow path, and if kids are biking or walking, how's that all gonna be handled? Because it's a narrow path.
Right, just like it would in the traffic calming of a roadway, and any time that our folks are on the street, they're always cautious about that. They wouldn't just speed through here to get to where they need to go. They would progress knowing that it's not a public road and that it's really just to gain access to the community. We always respond in due regard for that in the best interest of public safety. So that would be foremost on the people driving the apparatus, on their minds.
And is it just if it's a 911 call, or is it just if you need a police car going through would have access at any time to go through?
No, it would be for emergent use only. So if there was a medical call, there, a fire call, it could be for the police in responding to a break-in or something like that. But for routine patrol, they have the time to hop into the the community by going to the other ways. This is strictly in the event that we can't get down East Street, then we would go, this has a potential to go here.
So this would not be used regularly at all.
It's emergency access only.
Emergency access.
Rare.
only. It would be very rare because our response would be much quicker down East Street into that community than any other way.
Okay.
So it would not be just because we could, but if they were on Forbes and got a medical call, they may use that because it's their closest point of entry. That's what they would be.
So would there be some educating of the broader area then, some way to inform people, so
I don't
not
think
just the
anyone
abutters?
They don't know. This
No,
is,
yeah.
this is very, very new. We've just started to scratch the surface on it. And I want to say the call happened maybe a month and a half ago, when I went literally to get there and couldn't.
On the Strasser side?
No, on this,
On
on the
Forbes
Forbes
side?
side. Because when I looked at the technology on Google, it has it
At Glandor?
As a road.
It has it as a road.
Yeah.
So when I thought, oh, I'll just hop over and go, when I got there, I was a little disappointed.
That's
that
a
it was gonna
different
be
problem,
delayed,
that
you
it's
know.
as a road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a way, isn't there a
When
way
you-
on Google to inform
When
it?
the satellite comes up,
Yeah.
when the satellite view finally comes up, you can see it's a path. But
Yeah, I'm
the
just
way-
saying, isn't
and
there
it
a
may
way
be
with
the
Google to
easement that's
inform
out
them?
there that looks and sees.
Yeah, every now and then we get people trying to get down there thinking it's a road. And there are lots of systems out there now, more than there were before. We informed our town engineer
Proactive.
to inform these companies to, don't put it down as a road, put it down as a walking path only. But every now and then, somehow, it ends up being shown as a road.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, we had a bridge that showed that it was high enough to let a lot of vehicles underneath too, but.
There's a plan for that.
The
Did that answer your questions, though? Did that answer your question?
You answered my question,
Okay.
so I'm just interested, so.
Are you in a butter, though? Are you in a butter, direct butter?
Am I what?
I just want to make sure you're connected to this meeting they're going to have. Are you a direct butter? Does your house touch
Oh,
the?
no, I'm 3 houses up, but my
Okay.
kids go in the path and they bike and they're little, so. And it's.
I just want to make sure we
technically
include.
how we're supposed
for
to
the
do
meeting.
it.
I think it's important for her to understand that we have, the fire department has to stop, so they're not speeding down there. They're stopping, opening the gate, and then proceeding, so.
If we have a gate.
Well, if there's
Huh?
a.
If we have a gate.
But even if there's not a gate, if we go back to the other picture, there's a pathway and there's dirt on either side. Even though it will be strong enough to support the weight of a fire truck or an ambulance, they're still not gonna, because if it's wet at all, they could get themselves stuck in there, and then it doesn't help at all. So they're gonna use due regard because it's not a roadway. It literally is going to be just that access for it. So they're not gonna be whipping through there to get to where they need to go, because they're already shaving 8 minutes off if they're able to use this access.
Yeah.
Opposed to, and if you're having a heart attack, you really want to stay in the first 4 minutes.
No, I understand all that.
Yeah.
What's the policy in terms of using sirens for something like this? You know, like often emergency vehicles, when they're going through intersections, run the siren to alert
They
people who are
should,
coming.
anytime they're running their lights,
Yeah.
they should have their sirens going at all times. Now, in here, again, at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're going to use their due regard. There's no reason for them to be doing that. They may shut them off.
Just for the deer.
But again, it's,
Is there deer in there? That's
yeah,
what-
it's one of those, they're gonna use their best judgment again. And really, the whole purpose of lights and sirens is to move traffic out of your way. And
I'm just thinking
not
about
thinking
warning
there's gonna be
people
any
that
traffic.
something's coming through so that if
Or
they're,
maybe some wild turkey or something that you might want to try to move out of your way.
they don't move.
No, they don't.
Okay,
All
so
right.
do we need a motion or anything, Mike?
No. Rather,
Well, it says we
Have a
asked
good
to
meeting.
approve. All right, so we're not gonna approve anything?
Till after he has the meeting.
yeah.
Good luck with the meeting.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
But we do need you to take action in the next meeting if we're gonna get this in place by the time the East Street Bridge gets replaced, because that's in
September?
September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we need 2 weeks to get this done.
Well, I think in general, we're supportive of you having
Concept.
this conversation and determining the best way to do it. And if, you know, somebody brings up a point that causes you to say, oh, this is an issue, then you've got to address
Yeah, we'll definitely
Address
bring
that,
that to
but-
you.
from a public safety standpoint, we're not going to interfere with trying to make sure that our public safety departments can get to people in the most efficient way.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Moving along to our new business this evening. We have the MSBA School Building Committee appointments. So there are a list of appointments in our package here, and as a background, the board is aware the school department is working with, on requirements that are set forth by the Mass School Building Authority to advance the next phase of proposed redesign of the Hanlon School. The next step in the process is for the school committee to identify the MSBA School Building Committee comprised of various individuals. And we have recommendations for the town. Chief Executive Officer would be the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Mike Gillette as the Administrative Manager. Representative Office authorized by law to construct school buildings would be John Cummings, who's a member of the Permanent Building Committee. And the local budget officer would be Pam Dukeman.
So I was very surprised to see this. And it was most surprising because when we had the school department here in February, I said, hey, we should get going on this, so it's not the middle of the summer and we're having this discussion. The middle of the summer, we're having this discussion. I actually think, Mike, this is a situation where you should probably vet it with each of us individually.
Okay.
I have been involved in this discussion since 2015. It was probably the issue that triggered me to run for public office. It's not saying I'm the one, but I think it needs some discussion.
Yes?
Yeah, what's their deadline?
They have to submit by the end of July.
So,
what's
today's the 23rd.
They can.
We got a week.
The way it's been suggested is they have to submit by the end of July, but that doesn't mean they're fixed. They can make modifications as subsequent.
Now, this committee has longevity of the duration of the project?
Yes.
Does that mean de facto, I mean, I know the school building authority says it's somebody from the chief executive office, so that allows flexibility for cities versus towns, so, you know, there are different positions depending on what kind of local government we have. Does that mean that it is meant to be the chair, and the chair changes each year on our board, so it would automatically change, or what are the guidelines from the state?
Oftentimes, your practice, and I'll give you an example, is the Board of Selectmen has a person that's supposed to sit on the bargaining committee for the school department when they get into bargaining as a representative of the chief executive officer. Chief executive officer is 3 board members, but anytime you have one member, it oftentimes is the chairman that serves in that role for the year, if the committee is established during 1 year.
Have we been doing that?
The example I'm giving is when you do the
The
bargaining.
school department only brings us in
At the end.
final
Right.
hour, so it's not really applicable.
That's
This
not a
is a
good
working
example,
group for
yeah.
a long period of time. What's the, this is a state-imposed structure, though. the
Right,
School building
so
authority.
each one of those categories is a category that they've required. So it could be any member of the Board of Selectmen, it's up to you.
Well, I guess I'm curious, you said there was a recommendation from whom?
No, the recommendation is coming from you. Now, for the administrator, and for Pam, we're the only 2 in those roles. We went back to John Cronin and asked him who the PBC member should be, because it is a member of the PBC, and he had a conversation with John Cummings, and that's the name. So the only real decision that needs to be made is which member of the Board of Selectmen.
I just don't think we're prepared to do that tonight.
Yes?
What's your response to that? What
I
happens
guess my
if we don't
question
do
is,
it tonight?
why not?
I think he needs to vet this out. That's what should have happened before this evening.
Well, I'm not sure, what do you mean by vet it out?
I don't know who has interest. Do you know?
I don't yet, but that's what the discussion is for.
I
I didn't object to it, so I guess.
So I think there are, do you want to serve?
Sure.
Did you have a discussion with Mike?
I have not had a discussion with Mike.
Okay. So I'm curious how Michael Walsh's name landed in there, simply because he's the chair?
Because it's the
Yeah.
chair.
I mean, I think it would be better if we take it offline. I'm not prepared to make a motion tonight. or participate in a vote.
Okay. That's your, Nance?
I would agree.
Okay. And so how are we gonna come to this conclusion? That would be my next question.
I made a suggestion. As we often do in these types of discussions, offline, the secretary of the board can have individual discussions with us. He can make a recommendation. We do that quite often. I don't know why this is any different.
And then we can affirm it at a meeting?
Yeah. They at least have two positions that they're not gonna, at least two positions they're not gonna go forward with. They could always leave blanks and fill them in later.
Can
The
they?
two positions that they're not going forward with right now are the two resident positions, because they haven't vetted that yet. So, but if you wanna have a conversation, see if I can come to a conclusion, and then you can confirm it at the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't know that we should be making a decision when no members of the public have been included. I didn't realize they were leaving those blank as well.
Yeah, well, they're leaving them blank until they can go out
Well,
and.
they can leave another one blank.
Well, I guess, so who's gonna make the ultimate decision on the recommendation?
I
Is that
think,
gonna come from Mike?
I think Mike should have a conversation and vet it and make a recommendation.
And
So
then-
should we make the other appointments?
Sure.
So are we going, hold on, just so I'm clear, so whatever Mike's recommendation is, we're gonna live with that?
No, I think,
That's what I'm trying to say. Hypothetically speaking,
Well,
let's take the,
but,
let's,
you're trying to jump to step 2, I'm still at step 1.
all right, so let me just throw this hypothetically out there. Let's say that you say you wanna do it, I say that I wanna do it, Nancy says that she wants to do it,
Mhm.
okay? So then Mike vets it, and Mike makes a recommendation and says, I think X should be, one of the three of us should be on the board. Are the other two going to accept that? I'm just confused.
What do you suggest?
That we just vet it ourselves and see.
Yeah, I'm just not prepared to do that tonight. We were accepted into this process in the wintertime. I'd like to have a discussion with Mike. I have not had a chance to do that.
Okay. Nance, you too?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would move that we name Michael Gillette as a member of the MSBA School Building Committee, as the administrative manager of the town, and John Cummings as a representative of the office authorized by law to construct school buildings, that being the Permanent Building Committee, and Pamela Dukeman as the local budget officer.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, moving along to our next scheduled. We have acceptance of Westwood oil paintings from Judith Ciardi, Ciardi? How do you say it?
Ciardi.
Yeah, Ciardi.
Ciardi, thank you. And anyone here, Mike? From,
Nobody here from, Ms.
oh, Nancy, how are you, Nancy? Come on up. I knew I saw you come in earlier. You were hiding in the back. You were hiding in the back behind the chief. That did it, you know.
Christine, can we show them?
Yes.
Show the picture.
I received a letter from Judith Ciardi, and she lived in Westwood for 20 years.
Sorry, Nancy, would you just identify yourself for people at home who may not know who you are?
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yes. My name is Nancy Donahue. I live on Gay Street in Westwood, and I am the chairman of the Historical Commission. And I received a letter from Judith Ciardi, who is an artist who lived in Westwood for more than 20 years. She has moved to New Hampshire. And she is concerned about the paintings which she has done over a period of time, which are really very, very good paintings and very significant to our town. And so she wants to donate them to the Historical Commission. There are 7 paintings in total. They include a painting of the moving of the First Baptist Church, the Islington intersection of the church and the fire station, the school building that's now, okay, the
Colburn.
Yeah, I get it.
the Coburn
School,
School, the mobile station, at the corner of Gay Street and High Street.
Yeah.
And
Don't forget pie in the pants, too, you know.
That's my son.
Is
your
it?
son?
Is
My
it?
son's the first one, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Children.
And
We did
then-
not know that.
Yeah, I know, nobody knows that.
Yeah, and then
I like the fact that the Islington one has the Magliotta yellow in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Magliotta yellow.
Yeah. And then the, actually, the IGA store on Pond Street, which is gone now, that's
gone.
history.
That's me.
And then a house on High Street, which is still there. At any rate, I think this is a wonderful donation. And I get excited when I think of the possibilities of displaying it, and I think it's something that people will enjoy. It's uniquely significant to Westwood. So I'm here to ask the Board of Selectmen to select the paintings on behalf of the Historical Commission, and then authorize Mike Gillette to enter into an agreement that the town will take care, custody, and control of the pictures, put them on display in coordination with the Historical Commission. And then if at any time the town gets tired of doing that, that it would revert back to the Historical Commission.
No, you
it's
can't
okay.
get that.
They're
That's
great
all right.
pictures, though.
Yeah,
they
those-
have,
I
they have,
mean, they're up
very
in-
nice.
Maddie Fallen.
That's the High Street Market one.
Well, for those of you who aren't in the audience, you'll have to take our, honest to God, they are great
Have to visit the
photographs that
Donahue's
we've,
house and go look at the
Put
pictures.
them on the website. Getting in there, I have to go through a bunch of stuff.
They'll
Oh,
be
that's
up,
okay.
they'll be up on the new website.
That's not one of them, though.
That is one of them.
It's
Yeah.
not in our
Not in
packet.
our
No,
packet.
No.
she
Not in our packet.
actually, Judy reached out, when I spoke to Judy, she actually said she was considering some of the additional ones that she had of
Oh,
Westwood
so that might
scenes.
come as well.
So that may come as
There
well.
are postcards
We're-
that were made.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I have
them.
everything
Yeah,
else,
we have
just,
them.
that
Yeah.
particular one wasn't in our,
yeah.
So you may have to go look at the pies in the pants of Mike Gillette's office.
Okay, I would propose that the board accept Judy Ciardi's donation of all the original oil paintings of various scenes in Westwood, and to authorize the town administrator to enter into an agreement with the Westwood Historical Commission for the care, custody, and control of the paintings for future generations to enjoy.
I happily second that.
All in favor? Aye.
That's,
And just like that,
that's
it's
so
done.
nice of her.
It
Yeah, it
is.
is
Yes,
nice.
Really wonderful.
These are very, they're very valuable paintings.
I know. When I saw them, I was amazed that
Yeah.
she would donate them to
Does
the
anything
town.
come with, excuse me for sounding businessy, but with rights to reproduce, to create images?
That's a really good question, because it would be really nice if we did have those rights and we could take the proceeds and donate it to
Something
the
to ask, I
Westwood
mean,
Public Schools.
separate from this, it's not, we've already made the
Yeah.
vote, that's the right decision.
Yeah.
Just be interesting, because
Yes.
ownership is transferring to us? Is it? By
Yeah.
this?
She has already reproduced them and then.
I know, so we should ask, one, so we know if we can, two, so we know we don't make a mistake.
And
Right.
also sold prints.
Yeah, I remember seeing,
Mhm.
so I think we need to know that,
Right.
just for our own,
Yeah.
for our knowledge and for future.
I would imagine that there would be a term.
Yeah, I would say like maybe 10 more years or 20 years, whatever it might be, then we can reproduce
So, Tom,
them.
maybe you can look into that, whatever agreement we need to have with her. And if she says she doesn't want that, that's fine, we should just make it clear in our records so people know we can't do that.
It's my understanding she wants them displayed all the time.
That, yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine, it's just,
Have you talked to her?
that's just really awesome. A great addition to the town.
Okay. Moving along, we have the approval of the 5-year contract with Granicus. So this is to have the Board of Selectmen review a request from the town to enter a 5-year contract with Granicus on a redesign of the town's website for Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, Section 12B. So we were notified that our current website provider, Civica, was purchased by a larger company known as Granicus. The town currently has several software packages, including the one we're using tonight for online packages, Westwood Wire Delivery Service, and now Website Management. However, the IT director was notified that the current website, bless you, is no longer supported by its original platform, and therefore we have to enter a new contract. Contract for the migration effort will include initial migration as well as annual maintenance costs. Each year, the contract is subject to the availability of funds. And so They have given us estimate for the website development, 24,000 for the initial. And then, well, with a credit, so it's only 20,000 the first year. Then we have branding, and then we have a maintenance fee every year, starting at 20 and varying every year for 5 years. So, are we approving, Mike, both the initial design and then the contract on top of it? So is it 120 or is it 100?
Well, the decision's already been made to go to Granicus.
Okay.
What you're doing is allowing us to contract for 5 years rather than 3.
Who made the decision to go
Yeah,
with
how did we get to
Granicus?
that vendor?
Well, we had.
They were purchased.
They were, Civica was who we selected.
Okay.
We designed
It's
it.
the same company, different name.
and that-
Yeah, but
the company
again-
got bought, so we're kind of put in a difficult position that they're no longer gonna support the website we have, and we need to transition to a new website, and so this is the.
Civica, to me, is mediocre, if not poor.
For our website now? Yes. You can't, I'll be honest with you, there's a search button and you can punch in
It's
anything, and
terrible.
you can't find anything.
Can't find
It's
it.
You can't
terrible.
find anything on that website.
Wow.
You can search through Google and do a better job than you can
On our town
searching
website.
within the
Yes,
website.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
I see they
so-
did the town of Newton too.
Seems to be
Did you look?
there's unanimity
I
here.
worked with it at
Okay.
Newton.
This is not good.
It was not good in Newton either.
I particularly like the game that you get to play on recycle. There was a recycle game and you get to put it in each bin to tell you which one you should be doing it on the town website. In Newton.
Whatever.
Yes.
I just, okay, back to Westwood.
I'm just saying, I checked out the product is what I'm
I-
basically
we're-
telling you.
We're in a very difficult position, it sounds like, but I would be concerned, they just bought this company, they've got us hostage to go with them, they get to charge more money, and do we know what kind of product we're gonna end up with?
I would imagine that Donna knows exactly what she's
I suppose, in follow-up to that, I don't know if this is an increase over what we paid, or it's less, or, I mean, there's nothing really to compare it to.
We have to pay the
Initial
migration.
design?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that initial design is an unforeseen cost, but I think the software maintenance is the same. with
Roughly the same.
Why
roughly
would
the
we
same.
wanna do 5 years versus 3, other than cost savings?
I
If
think
we
s-
wanna,
I
if
think-
we wanna change the product, if we don't like what they do, wouldn't we wanna only be with a 3-year contract so we could move? And not be stuck in a contract with them?
Donna didn't share with me why she was going for 5.
I don't know why, she didn't share specifically, but I do know that website migration, after going through a couple of them with Donna and going through that, it's not,
awful.
it's off, I mean, when I say it's awful, I'm very glad I'm gonna be on the
But what we
maternity
have
leave.
is awful.
Yeah, so the back end stuff is not just, okay, we want this and we want it to look like that. The actual HTML coding and everything that Donna and her teamwork goes through, and the Excel spreadsheets that get downloaded, and it's very nitty gritty information.
Maybe there's not anything better out
yeah.
there,
Could
but
could we
it's-
defer this, though, till Dawn is here at our next meeting, or does it have to be decided tonight?
I don't know if it has to, it's,
Probably time sensitive.
I think Donna could come in and definitely explain it a lot better than I would be able to, cause she can do that. And she could probably give you better, examples of the Granicus website that we would be moving to. I know that when we moved to Civica, they were bought in between our last migration. And we went and met with them, and they are a great team, they are a decent company. We do have other software products through them. So as a software company, I know Donna's she vets up and down and left and right.
Website is
She
just-
is very good about doing
No, I know she is. It's just, I think what the pain point for us is to award a 5-year contract with no
Yep.
front-end process. I just would rather hear from her.
And what does our procurement officer think about this?
Well, her answer was, if you wanna go to 5 years, which is what Donna was asking for. Now, whether or not that was because Granicus was pushing that she had to go to 5 years, our procurement officer basically said, you need the Board of Selectmen's approval to do that. 3-year contract, we can do on our own. This 5-year contract, we have to come back and ask for your permission. That's why we're here. Otherwise, I'd be signing this.
So either bring Donna at the next meeting for a 5-year, or you make an
Sign a
administrative
3.
decision?
To make it 3 years. Yeah, okay.
Can you please share, though, our
Oh, yeah, I'll get back to
The
you.
results?
concerns with, it's the website more than anything. We aren't subject to the back-end work that's involved, but that website, I think, has been very disappointing.
Spent a lot of time picking this one out.
I know, and it's,
Switching over to it. And I always thought that Donna thought it was a pretty good website.
Well, maybe technically she feels like it is. I think our example of the search engine is
right, terrible.
a primary one of how inadequate it is. It's terrible. You wouldn't even think it had a search engine in it. It always says, cannot find anything.
I can give you a
Right?
classic example.
It's terrible.
It was for the immunization, for the flu shot. So, of course, I was looking for the form to fill out so I could go there ahead of time with my form already filled out. So I punched in flu shot. The form never came up once. Never came up once. No matter how hard I looked, I went to the Board of Health, I went everywhere, I couldn't find the form.
Personally, I never use search engine, but I can maneuver around on different
Shouldn't have to do that.
choices. Yeah.
Shouldn't have
Yes,
to do
Nora.
that.
The problems with the search engine are a factor of how the documents are uploaded. There's an option when you upload a document to list keywords that
Yeah.
could be used to call that up. So if the people who put the documents on the
Never
site,
do that.
not
Don't
IT,
do that.
but all the different staff who've put documents on the site, haven't identified those keywords, you won't be able to search for.
Sounds like we're gonna
But
need
if we go
training for our
back
staff.
and enter those keywords, you can search for.
Well,
anything.
one way or another, it sounds like we have the successor company
Right.
for at least 3 years. We've got to do better, because that website just,
The old website, though, along the left, it had the big topics, like the agendas and things. It was really much more user-friendly. I just find when I go into the new page, I'm scrolling and scrolling and looking. So anyway, okay, so we have a plan.
I don't do
Yeah.
websites.
So we're taking no action on that.
I don't do websites.
Get back to you.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Moving along, we have our local action unit application and regulatory agreement. Sarah has stayed there all night, very quiet. Nora, Sarah, do you want to come up? Please.
Good evening.
Good evening. So this is basically the same document that we signed before? Just,
Essentially, the regulatory agreement we expect to be substantially the same. It's the same property,
Yeah.
most of the same information. It's the addition of one additional affordable unit. The only difference that we anticipate in this application versus the one that was signed by this board last summer and approved by DHCD is the affirmative fair housing marketing plan. The property owner has obtained a new contractor to lease and manage the occupancy of these affordable units. I expect that contractor will have their own preferred method of marketing their units. But again, the affirmative fair housing marketing plan is something that's required by DHCD, and it has to check off a certain number of boxes and meet all of those important parts about fair housing and marketing those units appropriately. And I would expect that their contractor to put forth a similar plan that meets all of their requirements of the town and also of the state.
So we need to see that plan and the final draft application before it will be submitted. The intent is to submit it in September.
Okay.
Sooner the better. We'd love to do it at the end of August. If you're meeting again, we would have the
Full agreement.
document ready for you to sign at that time.
So what action do we need tonight?
I think it's just looking at the documents that we've sent,
Okay.
which is the early draft. It's really based on the original approved application for 2 units, and it'll be changed for 3 units. We don't have the new marketing plan, so that'll come back to you at your next meeting.
And I guess my question is, when I'm looking at this, is can you show, I guess, what is the difference between this document and what was previously signed?
I think what you have before you, you gave copies of the document
Yes.
you already signed.
Correct.
That is
Correct.
the one for 2, so
Yep.
it will be amended to change the 2 to 3.
Okay.
So it's an additional unit, and it'll be amended to change the marketing plan to a new contractor.
has he rented any of those too? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
All 12 units are.
Chief, all 12 are rented out?
mhm.
Any questions? Yes?
Nope.
John? Entertain a motion? Do we have to
No,
do it?
nothing.
No, we're not
No, we're not
Nothing to
taking
do
action.
until your next meeting.
That's what I was
Okay.
asking.
Great. Thank you very much, ladies. Okay. Now we have a future Board of Selectmen meetings. So our next meeting right now is scheduled for the 13th of August. Do you have conflict with that, Nance?
I do.
Okay.
I could call in if it becomes essential, but I will
No,
not
I
be
mean,
in town.
Something came up and I mentioned it, and then when yours came up, I said, why not see if we can change a different day?
I can do anything that week.
Can you do the 14th, Nance, or do you want
I'm
to?
away that week.
You're away the whole week, okay.
What, the week before?
Nope.
Want to do the 6th?
Like I say, I can call in.
Okay, we can do the 6th, or the 20th, but we have a meeting on the 27th, but.
Do we need a meeting?
Not in the 6th.
No, do we need do we need the 13th or something proximate to that? Because if we need it, I'll call in.
Yeah, we need
I
this
can-
one. and-
We have a meeting on the
Huh?
27th.
You need to do,
Why don't we-
Michael's review in August.
Why don't we change the 2 and put it on the 20th and get everything
Yeah,
good on the 20th?
no, I think that's, in fact, the 27th will be bad for me. I think I'm gonna be away, so.
Do the 20th.
20th would be.
Wanna do the 20th?
I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't we do the 20th? That would be perfect.
Huh?
You get the thing, yeah.
Well,
that's-
well,
If we do the
yeah,
20th?
We do the 20th?
20th, do it, is that all right?
You're just gonna be making a
It's gonna be
curb,
tight.
you're just gonna be making a curb cut and cut some trees. That's all it's gonna be.
Well, then we're gonna dig up-
We'll get it done.
It's not you anyway, it's
Todd
Todd.
will handle
So Todd will handle it.
Todd will get it done.
We'll say Mike Gillette committed him to it.
You'll be able to give a that gives you enough time to do a preliminary fall town meeting preview if there is
Right.
even a necessary.
What's the latest on that, speaking of which?
September
Latest
15th?
on fall town meeting?
Thinking about it, yeah. What do
Yeah,
you,
there is nothing that's come forward at all.
I sent you an email tonight.
You did? For something. Okay.
because my impression
No, I
is-
just sent it right before the meeting.
is that the planning board is trying to get stuff on it, but I'm not sure they need to have stuff on it. So what's going on?
So the planning board has 2 items. One would be the open space recreation plan that would be updated. That's actually adopted by the planning board. We're required that we're preparing that under a grant as one of our community compacts, and we're required to have it completed by the end of the year. But the completion is really the adoption of the plan by town meeting. We would then send it to, by the adoption of the plan by the planning board, we would then send it to town meeting for endorsement. But because that is not a requirement, I think that would still
That could wait until
satisfy
May.
it if we wait until May.
Yeah.
The other items are potential zoning amendments that they're discussing, which they haven't even come to consensus of whether they will.
But in
submit those
hearing
articles.
that, it sounds like they need a lot of work and time vetting as opposed to hitting the FinCom process. Oh, you need to come up to talk.
Oh, I'm
It
sorry.
sounds like they would need more time before it starts. The FinCom process
Right.
starts
So-
late September, so.
So the planning board had their first discussion of zoning matters at their meeting in July. They're meeting again on August 7th to take them up again and decide if there's any that they want to go forward with. But I don't know that there's
Pressing. need.
anything that's pressing. They couldn't wait until spring.
Okay, good. Good to know. You're not hearing of anything else, Mike, but John sent something your way?
Nothing else. Yeah, except John just said he sent something.
Nothing from Pam? No financial?
Pam said the same thing. She does not see any reason why.
And we know
she
the
needs to
schools don't. They had their necessary approval in May, so they're not bringing anything forward. I mean, not on the school building, I'm being specific to, but you should ask Emily just to be sure there's nothing else.
The only articles I would say that would have any time pressure are the ones that we have to resubmit that were approved at the fall 2017 town meeting that need to be reapproved. So those do affect some property
Do
owners
we
in
know
town.
that that's the case, that they have to be?
I haven't gotten to the point.
I'm sorry.
where
Okay. Jump the gun there. So yes, we do believe that they will need to be readopted.
We not only do believe, we know. That decision was made by the Attorney General. And we wanted to roll that out to
That's a
you.
terrible
So if
reason
that-
to have a town
It's
meeting.
exactly. So
No,
I
I-
wouldn't recommend having the town meeting just to do that. They will wait until May. It's just, it is an inconvenience to the property owners that were affected by those to have them invalidated
it.
and then have to wait until May to have them
reestablished. I don't think it's worth calling a town meeting if that's
You would
it.
get such a strange turnout because it's just, who would
Right,
know
so
to
for instance,
care?
one of those was a change in the definition of cafeteria to allow 80 Wilson Way to
Yeah.
offer a cafeteria in its
Internal.
business rental. So there's
Shame.
harm done to a business in town by that invalidation.
Yeah, I don't want to shut it down yet. I sent Mike some thoughts tonight. I think there's just a dire need to get some more field space online. Not that we're ripe to bring that forward at fall town meeting, but approval like lights at the Thurston Field. If there's a potential of having town meeting, I think that we have to talk about. The turf field at the high school is nearing the end of its useful life. I think before we start going forward with just replacing it, we should have the discussion about potentially a field house or some other way to use that space. So I think there are things that are brewing. So I just don't want anybody to say, we're not having fall town meeting.
Right, and those issues would be discussed in the form of the open space recreation plan, which would then be going to the planning board, but the endorsement of it by town meeting in the fall as opposed to the spring, I don't think would make that much difference. And in fact, if you're looking at trying to build momentum to accomplish the implementation strategies, you'd be far more successful in the spring than in the fall. Because having just had the plan adopted by the planning board, say in September or October, I don't think you'd be anywhere near ready to implement any of the
It would-
recommendations.
Just
And
as
by
a
the time you get to
response,
FinCom.
not a determination, but just my reaction is, usually financial articles are done at the same time. And I'll say for this reason, in terms of capital, Finance Commission rightly so will say, well, what are we going to see in the spring? If we approve this now, what else is coming up, and why this now and why not that? So it just creates a different conversation.
Right.
That is hard to,
Doesn't preclude it, but it's different.
it's different.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to our schedule. So
I wouldn't want it to not be, sorry,
That's okay, go
well
ahead.
received because of
Yeah,
procedural
it'll be well
issues.
received.
Okay, so we're taking the 13th and the 27th off, and we're replacing it on August 20th, right? We're all in agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then we have Tuesday, September 11th, because Monday is Rosh Hashanah, the 10th of September is Rosh Hashanah, so we moved our meeting to Tuesday night, the 11th.
And I will just say, I will submit paperwork to receive permission to call into that meeting.
Okay. Then we meet again on the 24th of September, right? Now, Christine, you have this wrong. I hate to tell you, but Columbus Day is the 8th. It's not the 15th. You have it on our calendar as the 15th. It is the 8th this year.
I don't know why I keep doing that,
No.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think I did that last time, too.
So, it's on Columbus Day. So, how is the 15th for everyone?
Fine.
It's
Nance?
fine with me.
October 15th, okay. And then what, the 29th?
Yep.
Or do we want to push it out to the 5th, because Veterans Day
Not
is
the
the
29th.
following?
5th.
Not the 29th, Nance? Okay.
I have a celebration to have that night.
So November 5th?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, that works.
John? November 5th?
26th.
Okay. And then we'll go, are you away the week of Thanksgiving, Nance?
No.
Okay. John?
No, 26th.
Oh,
It's right before my birthday. You can all take me out afterwards.
okay. We'll have to go out of town because nothing's open that late.
That'll work.
All right, so October 5th, and then,
Out of curiosity, Mr.
26th.
Gillette, what happens to town meeting, given Veterans Day is a Monday? Or the observation day is Monday? It would go to the 13th, would it?
13th, I believe, yeah.
Just so we know, just in case, because that impacts times that we need to be before Finance Commission and things like that.
and then in December, we have the tree lighting on the 2nd, and we have Hanukkah, Christmas, so,
Dates, right?
you say the
Be nice
3rd and the
if we-
17th?
That works.
The 26th and the 3rd are only a
Oh,
week
yeah, it's only a
apart.
week away.
I would just say go for the 10th and
10th?
see if we can get away with it.
Okay, we can just try for December 10th.
It's a busy time of year.
No, I won't.
After that, you will be.
No, the only thing I'm thinking
Okay, go ahead.
is
Pam?
alcohol.
And
the
licensing?
license renewals.
Maybe we
Yeah.
can do a second one the week of the 17th? Do the,
It's up to you.
tentatively the 17th
do the
if we
10th.
need it?
10th and the
If you
17th?
tentatively give us, because we have to public hearing those, we have to publish them.
So, yeah, let's do the 17th.
Yeah, 17th, we can,
We did, we
I don't
tried,
anticipate too many problems with.
I think we
Right.
did the one right
Liquor
after.
If it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We did.
It was in
Okay.
November.
So we'll say
Then-
we'll say the 10th and the 17th, Christine, okay?
Okay. We'll put 10th as a tentative. Or you're
I
gonna,
think the 10th is good and
No,
the
10th will be
17th
fine, the
good.
17th will be more tentative. but
Yeah, if we needed to finish
If
up.
you just need to come in and, do public hearings, that's fine.
yeah, I'm just, only because I'm thinking of licenses
We
at
got
the
all
end
of
of
our
the year.
licenses, right? We got
Like
taxi
we said
cabs
last year.
and-
We used to spread them out
Right.
over a couple meetings, but
Mhm.
we were able to get through.
Like
We
tooth
were, we did
extractions,
all
it's
of them
better to
all
get
in
it
one
all
year
done at
last year.
once.
Yeah,
I was thinking root canal, but okay.
Whatever,
that's fine.
same thing. Painful.
Okay, any other questions?
No more calendar
Good,
dates.
that's it, we're not into January. Okay. So that will conclude our meeting this evening. We are going into executive session. The board will be going into executive session to discuss two issues, one pertaining to real property on Washington Street in Islington Center, and one related to offer to purchase land off Laura Lane, both of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if the discussion were held in open session. Have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion to adjourn to executive session?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Mrs. Hyde?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh? Aye. We will not be returning until, our next meeting will be August 20th, 2018, right here in this same room, 7:30. See you then. Enjoy the rest of the summer.